Hello everybody, I am Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming, and let's talk about Beastmaster. Yeah, funnily enough, all the jobs that are coming in Dawntrail aren't even out yet, but Beastmaster's a bit of an interesting exception. It's a limited job. For those who don't know, limited jobs are pretty much Blue Mage right now, where it's more a minigame than anything else, that has its own progression system, its own gameplay, and is largely separate from current content and regular jobs and regular raiding. The gimmick with Blue Mage was that you would go around fighting monsters, dungeon bosses, or trials or raids or whatever, and certain abilities that the enemies did, if they use it on you, you had the chance to absorb that ability and then be able to use it for yourself. And there's some absolutely busted crap in there. To go alongside this, Blue Mage got an entire piece of content dedicated to it called the Masked Carnival, essentially a series of challenge modes, or little instances that you could perform with the Blue Mage to overcome some kind of challenge, or obstacle, or puzzle, and be rewarded with things like poetics or whatnot for your trouble. Final Fantasy XIV is getting a new one later in Dawntrail's patch cycle called Beastmaster, and we know basically nothing about it right now. However, with the help of some spoilers from Dawntrail's MSQ, maybe we can glean as to what the identity or the, let's say, job identity for Beastmaster could be. And like I just said, spoiler warning for Dawntrail throughout this video. There's two kind of contenders when it comes to what Beastmaster could be. Something similar to the Final Fantasy XI Beastmaster, or something similar or more akin to, say, a World of Warcraft hunter, a job/class that utilizes animal companions at their beck and call for various effects and whatnot. And the idea, at least with Beastmaster, theoretically, would be that it would go around the world of Final Fantasy XIV recruiting these beasts and then fighting alongside them. It's an interesting premise and could be really fun and cool. However, with Dawntrail, they've introduced this new technology with Alexandria, a regulator, a thing that allows you to use the souls of other people, or also beasts, to modify and enhance your own capabilities. And this functionality is taking center stage with the Arcadian. The entire premise is that it's a tournament arc where we're fighting people who utilize the souls of beasts or whatever to modify themselves, and then we try and overcome that fighter. It's an interesting system lore-wise that can range from being slight modifications to your basic attributes or just full-blown body transformation, like in the raids. And I think the timing with Beastmaster is making me elect that it's going to be the latter. It's going to be this Alexandrian soul user. And the reason I'm saying this is because Beastmaster is coming out at the end of the Dawntrail patch cycle, at least in the very later end of it. That means we'll have more raid tiers for the Arcadian, but also more MSQ with the patches of Dawntrail. Right now, we aren't using the regulators because there's an ethical quandary associated with them, and using the souls of other living beings as nothing more than tools to modify ourselves, and we view that to be ethically wrong because duh. However, it's entirely possible that with a society that's as digitized as Alexandria, possibly throughout the patches of Dawntrail or throughout the Arcadian, we find some way somehow to get an ethical regulator. Maybe we just make batch files of the souls somehow, or we make copies of beasts, or we like download them or whatever. Kind of like Pokemon Snap. Who knows? It could be anything like that. There's many ways they can go about doing this because they are the ones who are writing the story. I think there's one significant issue with this idea for Beastmaster, however, and that is how do you differentiate it enough from Blue Mage? Because Blue Mage operates in a kind of a similar principle to where you're going to fight these various enemies and then taking their abilities so that you can use them. So I can't imagine Beastmaster's whole gimmick would be going around fighting unique monsters or enemies or fights to gain their quote-unquote soul so that you can use an ability or whatever. I think the easier way to go about doing this would be to essentially transform yourself into a form and then gain a bunch of unique abilities unique to that singular form. Kind of like stance dancing, but like on steroids or something. Or I guess summoner, now that I'm thinking about it, just instead of summoning the thing to do those abilities, you just are the thing doing those abilities. So again, is this enough of a differentiating element to want it to be a limited job instead of just a mainline job? This is all just theory and speculation because we are really far out from the release of Beastmaster. But I think it's fun to theorize. Personally, I like the idea of either Beastmaster Beastmaster for Final Fantasy XIV. I think the regulator idea is a really cool concept, and I can't just imagine they came up with this idea for it to simply be a throwaway idea, especially when they're putting so much development and story time into this thing. But also just a regular Beastmaster, the one we all came to expect before Dawntrail's MSQ, could also work. Especially if you give us like an ability to read the thoughts or speak with these animals and go around the various places of Final Fantasy XIV, recruiting these animals to our cause and then fighting alongside them. That could be really cool and fun. So personally, I'd be fine with either interpretation. However, I think this kind of goes back to an overarching discussion that has been in Final Fantasy XIV since the inclusion of Blue Mage all those years ago, and that is, what is the point of limited jobs? The idea, and in theory, that limited jobs are designed to be jobs that wouldn't ordinarily work with the regular flow or balance of the game. I think this is easily represented through Blue Mage's acquisition of new abilities. Whenever any other job levels up, they just unlock a new ability that they can use. For Blue Mage, that's not the case. They have to go find these abilities and track them down. It's a bit of a scavenger hunt in that regard. And with these sheer amount of abilities at Blue Mage's beck and call, one, how do you balance that, realistically speaking? But two, is it a fair ask of the player that for this singular job, to actually gain your abilities, you have to go do pretty much all the other pieces of content again in this game, simply to unlock your rotation? On a smaller scale, I would argue probably yes, because that could be a cool RPG element. But with the scale that Blue Mage currently has, I just don't think it's feasible or realistic. And that's not even to mention the balancing nightmare that it would be for modern content alongside Blue Mage, and how you would have to absolutely neuter certain abilities to make them not wildly overpowered. But when you have things like limited jobs, and you have these separate forms of content that are essentially glorified minigames, well, then you can go balls to the wall. You can be imaginative. You don't have to limit yourself, because you don't have to limit yourself in terms of what this thing can do, because who cares if Blue Mage is balanced? And the same applies to Beastmaster. For either interpretation, whether it's the animal handler or the Alexandrian soul regulator user, you can go wild with it. You can go zany. You can go unrealistic when it comes to this gameplay, because it doesn't affect the rest of the game. And like, I think that is a good argument. However, messaging is also important. And is the message that a class design just wouldn't work in Final Fantasy XIV necessarily good advertisement for the gameplay of 14? I think this is an under-talked about point that I think is important to bring up, because the sound of that argument inherently makes the game and its gameplay loop sound inherently limiting. People at large simply want to have fun, and they want to play jobs that they think are fun, and things like Beastmaster appeals to a lot of people. Heck, again, just look at how popular similar class fantasies are in other games like Hunter and World of Warcraft throughout the years. Blue Mage is a staple Final Fantasy job throughout the years. Not just Final Fantasy XIV. Throughout most of the Final Fantasy games, there's almost always a Blue Mage, in some form or fashion, even if they're not called Blue Mage. Everyone looks at that character and goes, oh, that's the Blue Mage. Because there's quite a few people out there that love the class fantasy of going around the world, fighting monsters, and gaining their abilities to use on other things, because it's cool. Gaining 1,000 needles and then absolutely obliterating anything that's 1,000 or less HP is fun. But yeah, it can be a bit depressing when you tell the player base at large that these jobs simply wouldn't work with how Final Fantasy XIV operates. Whether or not this is the practical reality, it makes the game sound limiting, or at least limited in the scope of the gameplay that it can realistically have at the end game and in modern content. Now, I can't argue whether or not their iteration of whatever Beastmaster will be will fall in line with this, or if it could work as a regular job, simply because we don't know what they're going to do. And the idea of limited jobs won't be for everybody. And for those people, if a job identity they've really wanted to see in Final Fantasy XIV for the longest time, especially if they played 11 and played these jobs there, ends up being a limited job, then I can understand why they'd be really disappointed by that. When it comes to limited jobs, it's a really polarized subject. Because I like the idea of having these like mini games to where you don't have to worry about balance, you don't have to worry about whether or not it would work in the regular game, or if it's fair, or if it's busted, or whatever. You can just make it dumb fun. And while I think Blue Mage got weirdly repetitive at times when it came to acquiring certain abilities, I think on the whole, I like that they did it. I think it's fun. I don't play it all the time. I haven't played it in a while, actually. When I get around to doing it, though, it's pretty fun. And I like the idea of the masked carnival. So I think there are genuine positives that limited jobs bring to the game and bring to the table on the whole. But I don't think there's strictly only positives. There's also negatives and cons that come attached with them, largely stemming from the realization that these job fantasies just aren't going to be in the regular game at this point. But hey, let me know what you all think in the comments down below. I'd be really interested to hear what you think, because in my opinion, it's a bit tricky, right? In an idealized world, I think having the Alexandrian soul user be a limited job would work, and then bring in an actual Beastmaster as a regular job in like an expansion or two. Like, that could work, but the problem is, the name of the job is Beastmaster. So like, why would you rename the core class fantasy to something else and give Beastmaster to an Alexandrian regulator user? It's tricky, right? For me, I'm like 50-50 in terms of what they're going to do. I wouldn't mind to see either, but I think either idea and fantasy has an equal shot at being what Beastmaster ends up being in Dawntrail, but we'll have to wait and see. So thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified when I upload and stream in the future. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again!